guess I get to do this. Mr. Arriva, do we have some old business that we need to?
You have minutes in front of you.
Yes, okay. Does everybody see the minutes in front of them? Have you gone over? Does anybody see anything that is incorrect, changes, or anything needs to be added to those minutes? If not, then at this time I'd entertain a motion to accept.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes accepted. Old business.
There's no other old business except I can update you that the quarterly campaign for the quarterly financial disclosures that we have everybody fill out as you're required every quarter, that nothing has changed. Everybody has complied with the last 2 quarters, so they're doing what you've asked, and they're just filling out the one-page form because that's all they're saying is nothing has changed from that form to the last. So they're here to look at, but they're just a form with their signature on. So everybody's accounted for that way.
So nothing for us to review in that.
On that note.
On that note, okay.
So that's it under old business. Until you get to new business, there's plenty of stuff for you.
Okay. If that's it, then we'll head into new business. Jay, do you have some things for us there?
Okay, you got 2 major items. The first one is the review of the financial disclosure forms for the employees and the committee members. So they're here. We've tried it several different ways of how you all want to review this. Everybody should at least look at them and then put their initials, we had said on the bottom, is how we wanted to do that on the first page. And you're looking for completeness. You're not necessarily looking for whether or not it is right, because you don't know if it's right unless there's something in your head that you say, hey, that's not right because I work with this guy and it's not on there. So you're looking for completeness. They're filling these out under oath. If they're not complete, then it's on them at some point in time if it comes up.
Before you do that, I'd like for you to define something for me in the ethics charter.
Okay.
I hope you all don't mind, but I read through these before I came on board, but the other thing is, I guess I kind of read through them scatterly or something, but I went back to familiarize myself with them, and I came upon this, the ethics was 16, and under the 16-2, defined, I guess what I want is to define the items of if you own something that is a property and serve on the board, what about members of the family also owning that and so forth? In other words, if I have a business and say my husband has partnership in it also, could he be on the council? Or could I have been on the council?
I think I'll answer and tell me whether I'm getting to what you're talking about.
Okay.
So the way the ethics law lays out is that there are conflicts of interest. That's what we're trying to get at, as a conflict of interest. Yeah. And a conflict of interest would not bar somebody from being on something if they were an elected official. So if you were elected to be an elected official, you have the right to run. If the people vote you in, that's fine. If you have a spouse that is somehow involved in an activity, whether it's being employed by the town or whether it's being employed by a bank that the town works with, okay, you would then have the obligation to disclose that conflict, okay, which is what is part of the financial disclosure forms. You're trying to say, hey, my spouse has a whatever. If you or your spouse have an interest in something that needs to be disclosed here, it wouldn't matter whether or not you own it or the spouse owns it, because they're considered, if we're talking spouse, a qualified relative. And so a qualified relative, if you go through the conflicts of interest provisions, it means a spouse, parent, child, stepchild, or sibling. So it doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be a brother, sister. If they have that same interest, it would be a conflict to them as it would be to you. Does that make sense? So they would have to disclose it. When you disclose a conflict of interest, it needs to be disclosed on the financial disclosure forms if it's something like that. If it's not something like that, meaning that it's not an interest that you own, it might be a situation. For example, your husband may be running for office, so it has nothing to do with ownership. You would then have a conflict of interest because he's a qualified individual, and you would then be precluded from participating in that, anything that related to that person. So it's not only what you own, but it could be a situation. And then the situation would require whether or not you can participate. We'll use that example if we're headed down the right road, is that if your husband was on the council and you were here, you wouldn't be able to review his financial disclosure forms. You have to be out from that. It's not just voting on it, it's participating at any level. You couldn't even discuss it, because the theory would be you would be able to convince your colleagues something about that. So therefore, when you have a conflict, after you disclose it, then you need to recuse yourself from it. Typically, a recusal means you don't even be part of the board. If you were an elected official or appointed official, you get up and you sit in the audience, okay? The only way you would ever be able to vote on it, and these are very minute things, would be if it's a ministerial act that would have to have your vote in order to pass. So if nobody else showed up here except for 3 of you, and you needed 3 to pass something, you would then be allowed to vote in order to make it happen, but it would have to be something that's not discretionary, if that makes sense.
Now, another question on that flashed to my mind. What if this same property and couple decided to do something for the city, you know, counseling and that kind of thing, drug addiction, you know, have a place, how does that fit in? I mean, with the council, how do they vote on that? If, say, I had this, and I wanted to put this piece of property there and say, you can have this.
Okay, I think the safest route is always to say that I have an interest. That's to say that I have a potential conflict. Disclosure is always required.
Okay.
So because I might not know otherwise. So we'll use your example as if a company of mine owned a building and I was going to let the city use it. I would need to be required to affirmatively tell, I have an interest in the company that owns the building. So I've disclosed it. Then I need to not be involved in the discussions at that point in time. Because, again, it's already a conflict because I could make a decision that could benefit me. It can be an enrichment to me, meaning that you're paying money, like for example, this with the building, you're paying money for that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary enrichment. It could be like status. The conflict of interest laws talk about how you could have status or influence, those types of things as well. Does that get what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
Anything else on that?
Well, I had some questions, but I don't really.
So that rule applies to committees too?
Applies to committees as well, right, exactly. And it gets difficult in the fact that it has to be pretty specific as far as what a conflict is. It's a small town, everybody knows each other, everybody's related somehow. I mean, you get that. Otherwise, outsiders would be making all the decisions because they said, you have conflicts, therefore you couldn't do it. So it has to be a pecuniary interest, meaning a financial interest to yourself. You have to be directly involved in it. And the ethics law pretty much lays out what that is. Realizing that a conflict of interest is not the same as what you're disclosing here. Okay, you're supposed to disclose conflicts, but this is also more of a financial disclosure that's required under state law, whereas a conflict of interest judges the situation depending on what it is. I mean, it could be the fact that your son is a police officer. If your son was a police officer and you're an elected official, do you have a conflict of interest if you're making decisions about the police department? Well, if it's about salaries of the police department, probably. If it's about whether the police department gets new cars, probably not. So it would depend on the determination of the situation. So. Okay?
Is that satisfied? Okay.
All right. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Yeah, the way we did it before is that she divides it up in 4 packages and you go through yours and then do the Thanksgiving switch down the road.
Apologies, I called you by the wrong last name.
Did you? I'm out of it today, so I'm not feeling well today.
Well, I hope you get to feeling better. It's going around. Okay. So this is the stack of everybody divided between the 4 of us?
Yeah, there's no more.
Okay.
And everybody has submitted.
Everybody has to look at every one of these.
It's at least 2, but the last time you all wanted to look at it.
Yeah.
If there's a problem, so we know if there's a problem, we can note it on stickies.
They've got postage.
As we said, so you can note the stickies and then we'll follow up with that.
It's the solar blast, Jay.
The what?
You're getting pelted from a solar blast today. It's
Okay,
messing
that
a
could
bunch
be
of
it.
us up. At least that's what I'm sticking with.
Well,
I'm kind of out
it
of
hit
it
me all of a
today.
sudden and I'm feeling a little better, but I'm always the one to say, I'm laying in bed, am I just slacking or is it just I'm not feeling well?
No, I've been feeling kind of weird and it's hard to get focused today. That one looks good. But there was a solar blast that was supposed to hit her today.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. say on the back of here, there's a like chart, we supposed to fill that out? Or?
You don't need, yeah, if they don't fill that out, that's okay. That's just,
Well, it said for Ethics Commission use only.
if you guys want to. I mean, you can say, yes, it's there, but if not,
Okay. That's a lot of boxes. Yes, I'm doing. Today is the 20th, right?
Okay. On this, it says Schedule C, real property interest. Do you have any interest as owner or tenant, including interest in timeshares and real property in Maryland or in any other state or country? And the answer is no, except these are the properties.
That's always,
What do you think?
it's Ollie, isn't it?
Thanks, Clara.
You should say yes there, right?
Yeah. So I marked it. I mean, it's,
Right.
Okay, on Schedule A, the answer of yes, and is there any name the entity and list the relation name or address of the entity? They listed the name of the employer, but in the name, they just put various businesses in local area. There are a couple of different schedules in here that spell that out later, but somehow it doesn't look like that's probably what's supposed to be there. It's supposed to be a little more specific.
Yeah, see, I think for him, he probably doesn't work for any of those. It's not his income. He probably needs to have them somewhere if you put them in the back.
There are others, there are things listed further down in other schedules
Where it talks about his
where,
business.
yes,
So
it
this is
does,
covered and stuff.
by putting various, okay.
Unless you really knew how much stock was available, a less than figure is okay, isn't it? That's a problem.
Right. How would you know?
How would you know unless you went to their website and saw total number of shares that are outstanding
I
or
have a guy
something?
who discloses his 500 shares of AT&T. And I was like, nobody's calling you the AT&T meter.
I just want to make sure that less than was acceptable.
To you, since we have to, they need at least 2 sets of signatures. If you want to pass me yours, I'll
Okay.
go over those.
I'm almost done here.
I owe you a couple more.
Okay.
didn't Dave?
I did, I don't know.
Probably a good idea. Thanks.
There's it.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, question.
Sure.
I don't understand what he's trying to say here. Employee of councilman?
The employee is a councilman. He puts it under employee.
Relationship, employee of councilman.
Lloyd is a councilman. That's probably what it should say.
But he puts it down, well, it's two different, he's got two different things here. Oh, I guess he's saying relationship councilman, comma, employee of Arlington Baptist Church. Is that what he's saying?
I guess that's right. Yes. So that's his own relationship, his own there.
Right, right. The relationship as far as with the city is his councilman.
Right.
He's employee of these two, okay.
And I guess normally it would be like spouse, brother, whatever.
Right, yeah, that I understood, but I didn't understand what he, I think I do now. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That was the last one I did, I think.
Thanks.
Sticks it.
That's an address? I don't know if this is an accurate address. Northeast side, west Baltimore Street. Is there a street called Northeast Side that's just the
Oh, I
one?
guess it doesn't have an address. He owns a lot.
Oh, it's a
That's
lot.
a lot.
Did we decide that they were supposed to put on the city's employment?
We did. I mean, I think we went through this.
That's what I thought, yeah. Well, there's several that didn't do that.
I think they just need to have two, right? They just need two endorsements, or should we all look at all of them? At least two. Well, there's another stack here if you want to keep going.
Might as well.
We have those.
So, let me see.
Let's see.
That goes down that way.
This goes down the other end.
Is that one done too?
This is the things that you did. They have the piles that they were working on.
Oh, okay.
He just handed me that one, so if you want to look at that, and then I'll grab the next pile.
Oh, okay, okay, that's cool.
Me the additional ones that she's already signed.
Yes, I will.
So, thank you so much. Isn't there an ordinance for that?
Well, there is, but that's a difficult one.
Excuse me. Is this somebody's name or?
No, that's the name of the employer is Younger Nissan. It's over in Frederick. It's a Nissan dealership.
Let's see now. I didn't get that. Now,
This is very incomplete, Clara. Oh, somebody thought he docked you. You forgot to check the box. You want to fix that now?
Yeah.
I guess these were getting passed around the building today, telling people, hurry up, fill these out. Thank you. I'll take that off.
Is Jim LaFavor completely out of his business now?
Out of his what? Business? I think his son owns it all now.
He owns it all, okay. And his son is not his dependent, so he doesn't even have to live.
Right, so he doesn't have to say.
I didn't sign. Thank you.
Speedy Gonzalez over there.
A lot of pages, there's nothing to see. Okay. Thank you. Oops. I gotta do this yet.
Where does this guy live?
Hmm?
Where does this guy live? He says this is residential. Is residential?
That's Holly Glass.
Oh. This is Oliver.
Yeah.
I didn't think,
Yeah.
well, I don't know if I realized his last name.
Do it. Some of this is very familiar, like council people, because I've seen all this information before on
Right,
the other
exactly.
elections disclosure statement. Signature.
Gosh.
Well, yeah, he didn't, Board of Zoning Appeals get paid when when they meet.
Oh, do they? Mm. Good catch, I didn't know that. Hey, do we get paid when we meet?
I haven't seen the check yet.
Here it is.
Yeah, there you go, water. $1.05.
That's some good stuff. It's from the office supply. Bottled in Reading, PA. Nope, I'm sorry, Pine Grove. Probably tap water. Let's see. Hey, when you're a tenant by entity, that is not declaring that as your legal residence, is it?
What, a Taneytown entity?
Huh? Just tenant by entity. If you list 5 properties and you're the tenant by entity at all 5, you're not declaring that each of those is your primary
That means you own it
residence. It just means you own it.
with your wife,
Okay.
tenant by the entireties, yeah.
By its entirety, is that what that said?
Well, it's supposed to be, who knows what they.
Okay. I don't know if I was reading the... It is entireties. How about that? Okay. We have one left.
Are there any up there that I didn't do?
These were all signed by all 4 of us.
Okay,
So,
pass them down, I'll put them in the stack. Great.
thank you, Stephen.
Wonderful.
If you want to start looking at the flags and see if you have any questions.
You mean there's more than one? You have the color code for who's who? Red's a tough grader.
Spring water. Gold. City or Pine Grove?
My mom, when she was growing up, had spring water right into the faucet in the house.
Oh,
It ran underground.
Okay.
Nice fresh water. It was up at Vermont.
Was it a fresh spring that was constantly running?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We used to go up to that spring. We called them, when we were growing up, we called them worm houses. But actually, they were stonefly. What stonefly larvae live in. And they used to be all on the bottom of that spring. It was kind of neat. Trout like stoneflies.
You want to start the review of you only have 2 forms for the next one. Do you want to start the review of those while we're finishing up this?
Yes, please. That might expedite things.
So what you have here the next item is the candidate disclosure forms for the campaign financing. So you have Ms. Adelaide's, the one on the top clipped outside is the one that she's filed right now, the end of year report, and then her folder is behind it with the prior ones. Same thing for Ms. Kreisig. There were no other candidates that needed to file because they were all self-funding and didn't have any money except for Councilman Vigliotti, and if you recall, in his July one, he filed his ending one and gave the money away. So you can compare these to the other ones. When we reviewed them, and you need to review them, we took the fourth filing, which would have been like the one that was reviewed in July last year, and then like a bank statement, saw how it carried forward.
This was the one in July.
Yeah, obviously that's what she closed it down at.
That's where it should start.
I'm just going back to.
Oh, no, you can start back here.
That's what I was curious about. And that says debit amount, so is there a debit?
So we'll just mark it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about
Yeah,
it.
account balance 2.5.
That was the amount remaining.
And then so debit amount.
Is that the cash out amount? That's how I'm assuming. There's a balance.
That was the credit. Yes.
That's credit here, but it says debit here.
I guess debited out of the account.
Just debited out, okay.
Okay.
Was it donated or? Yeah, we're gonna,
Third
that's part
pile.
of this one.
Okay, great.
We're gonna look into the,
Yeah, it would have been this.
Well, wouldn't it be?
it should have been whatever was on here and show expenses from that the closeout.
This is, okay.
Mm-hmm.
After everybody gets a chance to look at it, we can talk about it all, see.
That should actually, go one
It
on
should have
there and
started,
one on here.
it should have started
Right.
with that and then moved
Mhm.
down.
Right here.
And this was a balance, so.
Right.
Unless there was an
Wait a minute,
expense.
let's back up here. Why is it on here, first report, second report?
So-
I didn't realize that the last time. This says first report, this says second report, and it says third report. This was on top of this, right?
And the date,
Here,
that would be the third report.
So we're just stamping everything.
Well, where we had done it before, this was this form that looked like that. So where's this one here?
Okay,
That's
I
the
just,
cover for that.
I got confused there.
so what am I on here? I'm on the fourth one.
This in yellow is.
This is the,
This,
that's the last
well,
one.
no, this is the final report.
Right, and so there should be
This was the
five.
third. Mm-hmm. Just trying to make sure I don't get them all mixed up. That must be
Then
that.
we should be looking at the fourth report.
Yes. This is the third report.
Yeah, we should be looking at the fourth. Excuse me.
I don't know if this is the third one or not.
This went with that.
Okay.
Except for that.
Just trying to make sure all these pages are together correctly. All right, page one. It's the third. First.
So you said there should be 5 reports?
For these candidates, 5 reports. Counting the one that's filed is the
Oh,
fifth.
counting this one?
That's the fifth.
Okay, okay.
Report, second report. Fourth report.
That's the one we should compare with this. That's it.
This would have been it.
Here's some.
It shows what that balance was,
That
then there
was
was,
off the third
and there was
report.
these expenses, which we
Right.
showed, and then there's this. So it should have started
So
from
that
here.
should start, right.
Okay. That's the paper we need. Let's keep those two together.
I guess.
All right, we have questions on that one then.
Should we go down here on this? Oh, not that.
No, this was an amendment. dates on this one here.
That's 7/11, that's the last
First,
time.
this was April. Okay. No, that's the other stuff. That's the regular schedule. I'm not sure what that was, unless this is just an amendment of this one page.
It might have been.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to show down? Bring this one this way, and we'll send the other one your way in a moment.
This is what we saw.
That's the whole
here.
file.
I went ahead and initialed mine, but I updated for the final report. There's a discrepancy here, 0. And 225. But that was 50, it's showing 5240 back in, we reviewed it last in July. Because there's no expense in 5240.
You understand my note?
Right here.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking for this page so I
Yeah.
can see.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll see a similar thing on the other one, that this number should be this last number there,
Right.
with accounting to go with it. Yeah. So I was pulling for it, so I'm gonna stick that one right on the top.
Same kind of the same
Yeah.
thing.
Same thing.
Which one is this? January 2nd. That was the last one, right?
This was the fourth report.
Right, so
And this
this
is the
one should
final. Yeah,
This should be up here and this should be up here.
right.
Why is this sitting over here differently?
That's just because there were 2 extra pages. That was an amendment to the fourth one that we had put up on top. And so I was just holding its place.
Now, where does these go with that?
These are the 2 that need to be reconciled somehow. Probably flip that one up. This is the 4th report. And this is the final report. Same with these 2.
So if we have questions and the persons are present, do we ask them directly?
We should discuss it after she reviews it, to make
Okay.
sure we have all the issues, and then if you want to, you can.
I don't know where they go.
See this one in the back again. Let's make sure I'm missing things.
I guess I should have done that.
Okay, that's where that went.
Mm-hmm.
This one.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you sign off on this one?
Well, I did it on the top of it. You should do it out here, right here.
That's it. Said
Well, but just do it again and put today's date. I gotta put it.
Just put another date on there.
Yeah, I did. I just put my initials again and then put another date.
Somebody's, maybe they're yours or stuck to one of the groups.
Yeah, they're mine.
Okay.
I need to,
Which one did you not see? Oh, over that one? Is that piece still pulled out, or would knock these out just so they're easy
They're on the
to
top.
get to? They were on top.
so that's the fourth.
The pages that correlate with that might be on the top right behind the yellow pages.
Well, I see it's down here, that's fine. We're initialing the front of the file? I initialed the paper, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we take each one individually.
I haven't seen that one, I don't think.
This one? Okay, we have questions on both files. If we can take Ms. Quicksand's file first. We're trying to, on the summary receipt and your campaign financing summary report, the first number on there would have been the cash balance at the beginning of the period, and you have a 0. The previous report you turned in, so there was a $52.40 balance. So this form, it should have started with the $52.40 at the top of this form. than an accounting of how it came down to zero. I see your filing from the account closeout from BB&T, which shows a $2.25 balance, but it's missing about $50 in showing us where that went in the form. So I don't know if you have, if it's just a error in numbers that you filed, but that's the discrepancy we're seeing, that we'll need to see some kind of information on that.
Copies of it, and then let me have them, because it's been so long ago.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
That's all I saw in there, and then with campaign finance, something should have happened with the 225 that debited out at the end. That's to be donated somewhere, is where that should have been. There's no receipt showing that a $2.25 donation went anywhere. So that was the final amount of the closeout of the account. And according to financing campaign rules, when you close the account out, you have to donate that money somewhere else. So that's two things that we have here is there's incorrect information on the campaign financing summary report. The very first number should equal the last number of cash balances from the previous report. So you can be provided with copies of that, so you can go back and reconcile your records and bring that back in. I'm not sure how much time do we allow for that?
I mean, we'll make copies of the report that was filed if you don't have it, and then you can give it. What I was figuring is that the candidates would refile them, and then we could distribute them via email because there's not that many.
Right.
So you all can look at it and determine whether or not it's in compliance. If it's in compliance, we won't need to meet. If it's not,
Right.
we'll need to meet. So I would say that if you gave them a week or 10 days, you know, the information.
Okay. My suggestion is 10 days.
I would go with
Everybody
10
okay
days.
with 10 days? Okay, Ms. Kritzing, we'll give you 10 days to look at this and refile. And so if you need one of us to sit down with you to show you, like line by line, we can show you what we're talking about, okay? Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right. I know when we're doing these things over time, it's difficult as time goes by for many months.
You're gonna make copies of exactly previous and then the last.
Yeah, we even flagged it on here. We put little flags of where the numbers are. There's a flag here and a flag on the top of there. It shows you this last number here should be the first number on the top of there.
And should probably put a flag on the 225. So she
And
doesn't
in the
forget to do that.
225. Okay. All right, we want everything to be in compliance. I'm gonna leave that fourth reporting on top with the final. I know it's a little bit out of order. Okay. Now, Miss Adelaide, similar issue on yours, if you were hearing what we were describing. Of the two campaign financing summary reports, from the fourth one to the final one, the numbers don't translate. And so we need the same thing for you to go back and reevaluate the beginning balance on report number 5, which is the final report, reconciling that with the last number of the cash balance on the fourth turn-in of the information. At the end of the fourth summary report, you had a $251.60 balance. At the beginning of the annual or the final, you have a $136.25 balance. Difference of over $100 there. So we just need to see how that needs to be reconciled out correctly, and so that it comes out to a zero balance. I see you turned in a receipt showing a cash donation to Agora Evangelism for the $136.25, which was your ending number. As I said, we'll have to work on that because we have to show where the other amounts went. And yeah. That can be provided to you if you don't have one.
You got a copy of the BB&T account closeout receipt for 136, right?
I do. We have that. So we know that that was the amount closed out. What we don't have is a reconciliation between that other amount, the two, what was it?
251 something.
The 251.60.
And before the report was approved, there was no contributions and all the expenses were accounted for, so I just wanted the balance. So it was, that's why I started that. But yeah, if I get a copy of the
Yeah.
report.
And there's a note on there saying that the balance would have been this, written in blue.
Well, I got all my bank statements, so I just, I've got all the bank statements, but I'll have to sit down.
Okay. And I'm not sure that it's required in any way. It's always better to do more than a cash donation, like a piece of paper, like a check that shows that emphatically it did go and that a friend didn't write a donation letter. Just my personal opinion there.
Can we say that again? It was cash.
I understand that. Cash is hard to prove even with a written letter when it's a friend who owns the ministry that you're giving to. So, but a check shows that more. I know that would have had a cost to it passing through the account. And I'm not sure that, I'm just saying that because I have to cover my bases whenever I donate somewhere, a check goes through so that I have proof that it went from my account to someone else's account. That just makes everything a lot cleaner, just so that people don't raise eyebrows, so.
Okay, well, the problem with that, if I can explain, is that I was on the last day for December 30th, and
Ooh,
yeah, so I had to get the dates right, but also because there was an issue with checks with this bank. And actually, some of the discrepancy, there was, right, there was fees charged that I got refunded. I don't think it was $100 though. They were charging my account every month, and when I closed it out, I had to refund it. So I remember saying, oh, something's not gonna happen, but I don't
Do you
know.
remember the amount per month?
Like,
Well, that would probably take care of some of that, but not all of it.
she had to go to a supervisor, then it snowed, and I was like, I have to have all of this done by Saturday, because it was the 30th, and so, they could only give me cash, because they were gonna charge me like $20, they wouldn't give me a counter check. I tried, I was like, everywhere else I go, you can get a counter check, and I'm like, they wanted me to buy, I said, I'm closing the account out, I'm not buying, spending $25.
it would have been a cashier's check that they would have probably made you pay for.
$10 for a
Yeah.
cashier's check. So honestly,
Yeah,
it
they do
didn't-
that.
and I just had to, so that's why I did it that way, but I didn't. I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, sure, I'm just
Yeah, I think
saying,
in the future. we'll
in the
probably do
future, I would
better.
do that just so that
It
you
leaves
don't
a paper
have.
trail though.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
I mean, I appreciate having this is good. But having a check that you can show emphatically it did go and transferred to another account that wasn't yours just makes everything a whole lot neater and doesn't leave any questions. Do you think,
So a check, in
yeah.
other words, oh, I see. I guess that I didn't know how to close, even if well, the first problem was I couldn't get checks out of these people.
yeah,
They gave us a card, they said,
BB&T is
because the
terrible.
type of account it was, we had a debit card, that most of my expenses came from the debit card. And I guess because it was a short-term thing, we didn't really order checks, and I went in, I was like, I need a couple of checks, and they would not do it. But also, I guess, when I was closing it out, I wanted to make sure it had the date, so I was concerned even if I were to write a check, close it out in time, the 30th,
because you were at the end of the period.
right, was to just take the cash out. But
I understand.
I
Okay.
wouldn't have thought of it in the anesthetic, quite frankly.
Do you will 10 days be sufficient for you to,
When are we gonna get our copies?
We get our copies tonight?
I can give them to you tonight.
yeah,
What date would that be, if somebody could check a calendar?
Give us a date.
I'd go with 10 business days.
That would be better.
Just because,
because-
especially if you need to get anything from the bank showing
Yeah.
you were charged fees, that can eat up some of that money that
Yeah,
is unclear where it went.
right.
How about March 6th? That's 2 weeks.
That's 10 business days, it's March the 6th.
Yeah, I've just got 2 weeks, next Tuesday, Wednesday, so anything after that. March 6th. And can we file electronically through the clerk's office?
I don't-
Original signature.
They need an original signature, so fill out, I'm assuming they can provide you with another copy of these, the blank set.
That's fine.
And that way they can just fill out the page that needs to be done and turn that particular page in along with any documentation. Yeah, sure. No, that's good to have, yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay. Well, I will put these back together in here.
We have that file, and I'll initial the front.
Yes.
I initialed the report, not the file, so.
Okay. Thank you for answering our questions and being willing to redo that for us.
Well, that's why we came, was to,
Yeah.
if there was a question, if we just got it in writing, we'd be like, what did they mean? This way we can hear exactly what you meant, even if we couldn't answer it, it's better for us to spend so much time on everything, things to write. Rather than do it more. We worked hard to get it in on time because it was the holidays.
Yes, that can be tough. Well, we thank you for getting what you did get in on time.
I had a couple of comments. Could I?
We're
take a
not
minute?
done.
Could I take a minute to read this?
Yes, one other question. So, our statements and everything were finalized on the 4th, 3rd, 4th. There was no more, we had to cut off a date specifically with no more donations, no more accepting donations, no more putting out anything, and that was done. So that was like our end of our finance stuff.
That was the 4th one.
So, the balance in our checking or any other money that was left there, we just have to make up a statement of where it went?
Fill out the statement that,
So
on
we
a blank
have- so it
form.
went to zero.
Form.
I think the issue is, like your checkbook, when you filed your July, the 4th one, you had a certain number, a certain balance. That was your ending balance in July. That's not the starting balance that you've showed on here. So what happened to the money? Was it an error, or did you spend it, or what? If it's an error, you can correct it. If you spend it, then you're going to have to fill out the forms that show where the money went between then and now. Same with yours. So it's just like a checkbook. Like it didn't start with the right number, that it ended with the last month. That's the issue.
The ending balance of the previous report should be the beginning balance of the last report. And then it reconciles, just like you going through your bank statement and looking at your receipts, that it all matches up. That's all. Okay. We have other business to take care of.
We have one item of the new old, but new on old business. So at the last meeting in July, you had directed that inquiries be made to Jack Ames at Defend Life regarding the robocall.
Robocalls, that's correct.
And it was the robocall that went out during the city election last May. So a letter was sent to him basically saying, we understand robocalls were made, they endorse candidates because of the campaign finance law. You need to file a form that says how much you spent on it, or you need to tell us that you spent less than $250, and then you wouldn't have to fill out the form, but we need something. And we have no response at all. So just, it was ignored. So the question to you is, what do you want to do about it?
Well, it wouldn't hurt to send a second letter before we do something else, but I don't know, what else do we have at our disposal?
Well, yeah, what are our options?
Well, basically, the first thing that you can advise and
Prove that he's the one that did it.
pardon me?
We would have to prove that he's the one that did it, right?
Well, we have a copy of the robocall that has his voice and his name on it. So, yeah, we could prove it pretty easy.
Well, as long as we have the evidence to prove it.
So, the way this dance goes is that if you want something like a letter sent, that's easy. You can say send another letter. But if you want to do any type of enforcement action, meaning that you wanted to get some type of relief, whether it be an injunctive relief or whether it would be some type of action like that, then you can only make a recommendation to do that, and then the city council has to authorize it, because they're the only ones that can actually file things on behalf of an entity. So while we certainly can write again and can be happy to do that, the question is, if we're ignored again, what are you going to do at that point in time? And you can decide you're just not going to do anything about it, or you want something done. and then you can make a recommendation to the city council about what you'd like done. The actual legal remedy that we would choose would depend, but it would be something in the nature of like an injunctive relief, where you're gonna say, look, you either need to fill this form out because you violated the law, that type of thing. So, if I'm being clear, you get to make the recommendation on that, but the council could say, we're not doing that. The council could say, we're doing it even anyway, if, you know, once this
Without
report
us,
goes to them, right? They could say, the city is gonna enforce its campaign finance laws, so, that type of thing.
Well, I'll make a motion, we take action tonight to send a letter and.
Certified?
Certified letter with a 30-day response time. With no response time, we make recommendation to council to take action.
Second that.
A letter, I don't think a letter will do
Discussion.
it.
Well, the letter's
If
just
you
going to
wanted-
say, we're giving you 30 days to turn this in.
Yes.
And after 30 days, if we don't hear from you, then action will be taken as passed by the city council.
I would think that, because unless financial things in there,
And we don't want to be
they're just
back in here in
searching
30
around
days to
bad
deal
file.
with no letter came in. So, okay, well, there's been discussion, and I'm in agreement with that too. So, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay, take care of that.
Okay.
Do you have any other items of new business?
Does anybody have anything here
I think that was
they need
it.
to bring forward? No?
I'd just like to say, I'd like to recommend that everybody that has anything to fill out these forms should get a copy of the Ethics Committee charter. And let them see what we're checking, because I bet you half of them don't understand it if they don't come to meetings and so forth, and many of them don't.
Right. I know they were provided initially when it went out,
The
so.
Ethics Committee charter
The
or
ethics
information?
ordinance
Ordinance,
saying, here it
okay.
is, because initially, when the first time it went around, this was kind of intrusive. So the ethics board said, here's the reason why, here's what we have to provide, and do it. And there hasn't been that much turnover, but we could probably put like a cover letter directing them to the website where they could see it if they wanted to look on their own, so.
That would be good.
That would probably be.
Yeah,
good.
that would be sufficient. Okay, well, I know,
Save money.
On my behalf of the finance reports, if there was an email that we could have emailed questions to besides Clara, it would have been more beneficial. Because whenever we had a question, it was always brought back as to, it's all in there or it's on the website. And at the time, the website was not up. And at one time I heard it was in a different language. We had copies of paper, but we never had anybody we could go to and ask any specific questions.
well, we don't have a resource person in the city office other than Clara to explain those things. We've tried to, in some of the things, we had language changed to try to make it,
Right?
what's that?
It's the ethics board though, right?
We are
So
the
it's
ethics board.
Ethics laws and the ethics checks, then it should be somebody that is gonna say, okay, if this is your question, then this is the answer because you all are checking it.
Well, always our questions, if it's something to the city council, you go to the lawyer. That's what we pay him for, is to answer questions for the council,
Right.
and as the council, basically.
Well, I mean, the situation is, I'm not going to answer the questions that are provided. These are statements that the candidates need to produce and give to you, and then we review them. And I could get if there was the same mistake or the same issue across the board, like a teacher does with their test. But all the other candidates managed to fill out the forms without any issues. And the way you all have dealt with this was there was never any penal action, there was never anything other than we want you to change this. So in essence, what's happening is exactly what you want. You submit it, they looked at it and told you to change it. It is a far more difficult thing for you to get the staff people, me included, to be the ones that review things, because then if the candidate's not happy, they're going to use saying the staff person reviewed it incorrectly.
And the staff person may not necessarily have the documents in front of them that the candidates would have. So, I mean, you're operating with one hand behind your back.
And when we talked about this initially, 2 elections ago, we said that you all were going to be pretty lenient about it because it was new and because that if there was a grave situation where somebody just didn't file it, you would deal with it differently than if somebody made the attempt but they didn't have what you wanted. It's your discretion of what you want, not ours. So that's why you're supposed to meet and deal with it. If it were just one of you talking to them, then it's a problem where that could be misinterpreted and it's not in a public session as well.
Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is that if they're asking questions, they need to come here because it's recorded here. It's not recorded there.
Oh, yeah.
As public record. That's all.
Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. First of all, thank you. I think you try to really be a fair board and appreciate the opportunity to correct things since it was new. I think it has been evident. I spent a lot of time trying to make sure things were up to snuff. So my comment about the ethics, the financial disclosure forms, is that they're really not necessary or relevant until a candidate is elected and becomes a council person. And it's not about hiding anything, it's about privacy, and I feel that it's a discouragement to people running for public office. And it's not the only place that does it. I've heard it raised at the county level, at the state level, that having people give so much information and having that before they, of course, once they're elected, you have every right to have all of that information. And I, as a candidate, would never have an issue with that. But I want you to consider the fact that having candidates do all of that up front could be perceived, and I had people tell me I would have run, but I'm not putting out all my private information like that unless I'm elected. And they always said, unless I'm elected. If I'm elected, I would do it. But it just felt like it could be a tool that could be used down the road to target people that are unpopular. And I heard that said here. Some of my opinions about how to run things in the city aren't that popular. If I run and I don't win, all my stuff is out there. But if I win, I'm perfectly happy because that's where it becomes relevant. And once they're elected, all of that becomes relevant. So that's my comment about that. And then the campaign finance forms, which I had a copy of it. The big problem with that is that there's no definitions. That's not your fault. But the city council uses the state, campaign finance law, and there are no definitions. And that caused me quite a bit of grief, quite frankly, because I tend to overthink things. And if I had a set of definitions, I might have still had some questions about it, but they would have been fewer and farther in between. But the interpretation and the application can be used, again, there can be a perception, it could be used by your attorney, by you, to target or favor certain candidates. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying for your protection, it creates an appearance that could not look good for the city because of all the contention going on in the city in the first place. The solution is to send a request from the board, a formal request from the board, back to the city council and ask that they adopt the state definitions if you intend to use this law in future elections, because then you're clean. Someone like me can never come up and say, I'm used to doing things exactly, and I'm just like, I'm going through it and reading it and outlining it and highlighting. I'm like, where are the definitions? What does this really mean? And to be quite honest, and I have some emails that when I sought advice, I wasn't at all sure that I wasn't being singled out for go look it up. And I don't know that what they were calling the government candidates, who were people within the government system already, weren't being given the answers, and I was given a hard time. But I think if you have the definitions, there can be less of that kind of thing. And so you didn't create this, but you certainly, as the board, have a right to put it in writing and send it back to the council and say, we've been through this, and this issue was raised, and it just doesn't make any sense to adopt the state law and not the state definitions. It looks fishy, or it could be construed that way. So I hope you'll consider that. And I do appreciate the time that you took to, work through everything without having definitions yourself. It would help you also. I think it would help everybody. I just wanted to announce The Tri-District Republican Club and the Women's Republican Club are having a Black History Month presentation of Black Patriots. And I would have sent you all an evite, but no contact information is yet available on the website. I did talk to Mr. Heine. And
There won't be emails.
well, he's going to, I was promised that your names would be posted. I really think for the citizens of Taneytown, people who want to get involved, want to know what's going on, not just with you, but with every board in the city. A citizen should be able to get on the website and see who the boards are, what the names of the members, their terms, when they expire. I think there should be contact information, but at least that minimal information. So he said he was going to check, because I don't have time to spend hours looking for it. But when I first came in here, I really didn't know. I knew a couple of you, really just you. I learned the rest of you later, but again, you know, I'd like to see your names up here, who's the chairman, who's the co-chairman, or the vice chairman, so that if somebody does come in, it all looks very professional, and you know, that your names, you are a board, and your names, I think, should be on the website at least. Okay, and then email address, and so anyway, I did want to invite you out. It's this Friday, February 23rd. We're showing a free movie called Black Patriots. And if you're wondering why some of our Black Patriots were written out of American history, it'll answer that question. There's dinner at Flicks at 6 o'clock, and the movie's at 7 o'clock. It's the American Heritage series. So I realized I sent out evites. I think you said you got yours. I sent out evites to everybody else, and I wasn't able to, so I just wanted to announce that. We'd love to. No, I noticed you saw the evite, because I sent the evites to people. But you're welcome. When I realized you had seen it, I was like, they didn't even know about it, so I just wanted to announce that.
Also, they need to know that you're not picking up the tab for dinner.
Yes, it's Dutch. And I think that's it. Thank you for your time, and let me share my comments. I did, as I was going through things, I wrote notes, but a lot of it got thrown into a box, and I moved on to other projects and stuff, but hopefully before the next election cycle. There were things, oh, I know, just to confirm too, you see all these like political committee, I kept putting these in because there was no instruction about it, individual. I think as it's been explained to me now, like, I'm not responsible for a political committee sheet or an individual sheet. Is that correct? Like, the people who donate, they have to complete these forms. I don't complete them. I mean, I did because I didn't want to look incomplete, which I would put not applicable for like political committee. But had a political committee donated to my campaign, the actual committee is the one responsible for this form, right? Not the candidate.
Or if you know that they have made those things on your behalf, I would imagine you could fill those out as well for them, saying, let's say such and such political action committee is endorsing you and is making campaign contribution, or going to do robocalls, or they're going to do something. It should be reported to us one way or another, either from you or from them. If it's left out, then we have the situation that we're now in with some robocalls that went out and no one claimed those as benefiting their campaign. And so,
right, because I actually didn't know about it until after somebody else told me about it. I didn't order it or ask for it, and I was told after, and I don't, again, have any control over whether he's going to comply. I mean, you know, you have to, again, it's one thing to have jurisdiction over citizens that live in Taneytown, and you might run up against something else with people that are outside of the city limits. I don't know if the city council can do anything about that or not, but just something to think about. So, well, then again, you know, I like everything to be really clear, especially with this stuff. So what I had wanted to see too was like a cover sheet that listed all the forms. I was going to do one for myself, but that would be really helpful to make sure you know, a cover sheet that you can go through and check off each form, and knowing, you know, which one. I just erred on the side of turning in everything, even if it didn't really apply. But someone did tell me, no, if an individual, they have to file this, not you. I mean, you can help them, but if a candidate is responsible, it needs to be spelled out. If they're not, it would just clarify it. It just, you know, make it less confusing. So anyway, if I come across any more notes on my little things that I found out, I'll try to submit them to the board for when you know, you'll probably review and revise maybe some of the forms before the next election. Because my goal always is to encourage more people to run for a public office, and to make it as, as easy as possible, because it is rather intimidating, especially when you're first time. So, thank you.
Sure, Kendi. Thank you, Ms. Adelaide. Thank you for your comments. We do care, and we thank you that we have some more things that we can, consider and think about for the future election cycle.
Hi, Rhonda Kurtzings, and I just wanted to add that on the forms, they were not explanatory on some of the items. And then on each election, because it is probably falls on different days of the week, they could be put the actual date itself on it. And then when you list down the first report or the second report, it could be the actual date and not days, because on 3 incidents, they were actually on either a weekend day or a holiday. So it could have been more clear on the days and maybe more simplified, because for the average person that's just trying to run, it was a lot. It was very time consuming. Every couple weeks, it's like if you take out your time of when you start it and when you end, and how much time you have to put into 4 or 5 reports, however many it was, it just seemed like the whole time we were doing nothing but reports. So it does take a lot of your time up. And we did get a lot of comments on social media about those reports. So people are looking at them and commenting on them like it's our control of what's going on. Only certain parts of it is your control. So, thank you.
Can I just say something? In politics, you're negative. I don't care whether it's small town, county, state, federal, whatever. You're really naked, because people are going to want to know everything. And what happens is a lot of times they get a rumor that's completely false. And the other thing is, have you ever run for an office in any other state or played politics? I'll use the word play. Or worked with political people who are running for an office?
I was a poll watcher in the presidential election.
Because, every state has different rules and laws. So I'm not an authority on it, but I had a little training. And
Well, the bigger elections are harder, but also, too, I think, with the ethics thing, it's ethics thing, so, you want it to be right. And I did, too. It's like trying to, if you had the exact date, how hard could it be to take the calendar and if you would just put a date on there, because I'm like, did we do this right? Did we figure it out? I'm reading and I'm going, it says, if it's not this day, if it's on a holiday, go to the next one. And we filed, because there was a missing comma or something in the language, we filed one on May 31st, and Claire was like, that wasn't due till June 31st. Again, I was always erring on the side of going early or doing too much, but it did take up more time. You do want it when you're running, you want to spend your time campaigning. You have to spend a certain amount of time doing this. But again, I agree with Rhonda. When you do the next one, 29 days before, oh my God, everyone's got to stop. When you're under so much pressure with everything else, there's there's just so much going on with campaigning. I found myself second guessing myself and saying, I hope we calculated that right. Because the one thing you don't want to do is miss a date. If you're serious about running, you don't want to miss a date. So I would say, instead of the 29 days before, 15 days before, 10 days before, when that election cycle comes up, just put that date down. Then it goes on a calendar. See, I had a big campaign calendar, and I was always guessing, and I said, no, I think we miscalculated, but luckily we erred on the side of filing. Claire, I think you remember that. We filed May 31st on the 4th report, and then we figured, or somebody told us, and she said you would just hold them because they weren't due until June 31st. So again, because it's ethics and people can make accusations, the clearer it is, so that people who really do want to comply can have that security that somebody won't be playing with their dates or their numbers or making accusations that just aren't true when the intent was to fully comply. So thank you again.
Thank you. Certainly things for us to look at. I am sure that one of the reasons why there aren't specific and hard and fast dates is that these are forms that will be used year after year after year and not updated unless there's a change to campaign finance reform law by the state. So unless they're actually revamping it, we would have to literally every year change the forms that we had an election to modify that every 2 years. So then if we have that up on the website, we run the risk of the dates being wrong if someone doesn't go in and change them on the website when they might get changed on the forms. I can see why it's in generalities, but I hear your concern and how it caused, issues where people had to guess for dates.
As a prototype, it's a great idea. Like, that's a great prototype, but it just seems like it would be more comfortable for candidates if before a particular election cycle you went through and did the actual, these are the dates for this election cycle. I don't think it would take you very long, but coming from the board, then the candidates can trust these are the dates, and if I'm not good with numbers or I missed something, I got my date wrong, because it's just the one thing you don't want to mess up is a date on an ethics form. So, it doesn't seem like it'd be too much trouble just before, every 2 years before, to say, we're going to set the actual dates and keep your prototype, and then you count it up, and then when it comes from you, we know it's right. Or we know we can depend on it. If it turns out wrong, people aren't going to criticize us for missing a date.
And I know the reason why we ended up calling it the end of June is because it said the end of the month after the election. That was that one.
I know one of the reasons why we were extremely lenient on all these things is because we're all still trying to figure out these new requirements. And we are trying to be in compliance with what the state is doing for the sake of making things even-handed all around, so that people know when they come to Taneytown, the same rules apply. We're not going to be the town that does something different, because that might invite people in. And there's reasons why you have to make these disclosures, because people want to know if you're being sponsored by an industrial chemical group or something of that nature. If they want to build a plant in Taneytown, people are going to want to know that that's who's backing your campaign. And yes, that would probably affect you getting elected or not getting elected. Mm-hmm. And that's just the things that people have a right to know. And that's part of why these things are in place by the state, so that people know when they're voting for somebody, they have ties to certain things. And we might expect certain behaviors if we vote those people into office or not. So I'm not going to second guess the state on that, except to say that the city council and everybody agreed we would go with those same things. I'm not sure why we didn't adopt the state definitions, but I think we had a conversation about that, saying even those were unclear. If that came up,
specifically rejected them.
Yes, they were unclear and made things even more confused.
Well, so then you said even-handed, but the perception is not even-handed. The perception is that you adopted the state ethics thing, so you can change the definition meaning, and that keeps everybody pretty much off balance except for your self-funding candidates. Why should we be penalized because we decided not to be self-funding? It does make it more complicated, and understand that, but all the more reason. A lot of my struggle was, where is the definition? I would say err on the side of putting the state, if the state definitions are that unclear, then reject their campaign finance law, because it's not even-handed. It's very suspicious that the council would adopt that and not the definitions, because that means somebody can play with those definitions with candidates that are not popular, especially with not self-funding candidates. When you have to use really more of this law to kind of get through everything, you need more of the definitions. And I'd rather see what he decided was unclear definitions. Across the state, who's making that judgment that they're unclear definitions? They can't be any less clear than no definitions. So you said you want it to be even-handed, but the perception without state definitions, I would say, and again, you can't do it. All you can do is recommend the council, but at least it'll be on the record that the ethics board sees the problem with this and has made a recommendation. And then if they don't do it, then it falls on them, the accusation of looking, not even-handed when it comes to everybody who's trying to run for office. And then nobody can point that finger at you. And that's why I raised it, really, because to protect the board. And when you do that, trust me, I'll be making the same pitch to them, that it doesn't look good, and give me better reasons why you wouldn't adopt state definitions. If it's a problem, do it, and then let's deal with the problem. But to me, to not do it it just feels like a cop-out, so thank you.
I don't want to prolong this.
No, and I just want to say this, as far as I know, and I've been on this committee before the last election cycle, nobody was bumped out of the elections for not getting those forms filled out correctly. No one was barred from running as a candidate. So right now, it's what we have, and it's actually working. I'm sorry if it's creating problems for you, and that's something we've heard you talk about that, and it's certainly something we're going to look at and see, is there something we can really do about that, given these aren't really our rules? But that we want to go with the, right. So I appreciate your comments, and I'm glad to be able to say that I know neither of you were precluded from being part of the election. And this particular board was very lenient with everything to make sure someone wasn't knocked out of the election because there was difficulty with the forms. And so we're all doing our best with that, and we'll continue to try to make some kind of recommendations as we can. Okay? So thank you.
And I just want to clarify, because again, I don't want to prolong this, but this is not accurate, what's being said here. So the city council did not adopt the state campaign finance laws.
Oh, they didn't?
They didn't adopt that at all. They adopted their own, which is what we have here. Okay. And the suggestion at the city council level was, let's adopt the state definitions to go with our own thing. And that's what doesn't work.
That's why.
It's not about being unclear. It's about the fact that the state law has a lot of different other things that doesn't completely apply with ours. So therefore, adopting it would create more problems because you'd have definitions of things that wouldn't apply here. So that is what happened, and the council specifically looked at the issue and said, that's it. As far as the state law, the only part of the state law that applies here is the fact that candidates and elected officials must fill out the financial disclosure forms, campaign finance forms. So that's required under state law, which is adopted through your ethics ordinance. So that's the facts.
Thank you for that clarification. Clearly, I was confused on that particular issue. Thank you for straightening that out. Okay.
I suggest I make.
Is there any other business that we need to hear this evening?
Nope. We will contact you regarding the financial disclosure forms once they're filled in. We'll send you the campaign finance forms once they're completed, and then we can make a determination of whether you need to meet again. You probably won't need to meet again unless there's some call for it until prior to the next election cycle, which would be around this time next year to get out when the scheduling dates would be. And at the same time, you would review next year's forms.
Well, thank you for your service to the city, Clara, for your service. Thank you for your responses to us and for getting these forms cleaned up one last time. And thank you to all who are on the commission tonight for being here. And if someone, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, if someone would make that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This session is closed.